Hi, I'm Mark Richmond from Chef Knives to Go. We get a number of questions about how to reinstall handles on wah-handled knives over time, and I thought we'd do a quickie video on how to do this. This is a wah-handled knife without the handle on it. We put handles on these knives from time to time, and also sometimes guys get them, use them for a while, and they they come off and they have to reinstall them. So I'm doing this in particular for a customer that asked us how we glue them up. So the first thing we do, the hard part is making the handle hole fit the tang. And the tangs can vary in size and shape. Sometimes they're curly. This one's really nice and straight and flat, so that's not a problem on this knife. But you can see we have a clamp here, and Alton often uses a small file like this one, and he goes in there and he just tries to get out the material so that he can fit the tang in there the way it's supposed to fit before he glues it. So there is another method you can use, which is to heat up the tang and then burn it into the handle, and then pull the handle off once it's burned, and then glue it up. But for most people, I think using a file like that or a drill bit and kind of hollowing it out would be a safer, easier method. So what do you think about that, Alton?
Yeah, that's usually what we do.
Yeah.
So,
So what we're going to do now is you can pick up epoxy, which is probably the best thing to use, and this stuff is called Loctite. We use a version of that that just holds more and is easier to use. The applicator's better, but this one you can get for just a few bucks at a hardware store. And you can see the epoxy comes with two flavors. One's a hardener and one's the glue, and they mix together when you syringe it out, and then it hardens quickly. This one's 5 minutes, so you can't mess around. And the only other trick I would suggest, what do you want to say, Alden?
so the most important thing that we do here before we install any handle is we wax the handle. So we can pass me your paste.
Right.
We recommend using Mark's special black wax, and it's a food safe honey.
It's beeswax.
Beeswax
with mineral oil mixed together.
So it's good for your hands and for your food. And what we do is we wax the entire handle, including the top here, as well as I tape off the blade and wax just this part, not the tang, because otherwise it won't stick. And that's the most important thing, because otherwise you're not going to get a clean finish looking.
Right. Basically, what he's talking about is the glue will seep out when you stick the tang in, and then you got to get that glue off. And if it's not greased a little bit with some wax or something, some guys will tape that ferrule up around the top here, so if it squeezes out, they can pull off the tape. But the wax is the way we like to do it, and once you do that, you can peel that extra epoxy off without having it turn to concrete on the end of your handle. So go ahead, Alton, and fit that, and then stick the glue in. You can see he's already filed that out pretty well.
I filed it, and what I did here is I typically add a little bit of tape, fold it over on the bottom just to get a little bit more of a snugger fit inside the handle. So we're just making sure that fits in there the way I want it to. And now we're going to have fun with some epoxy. We have this really cool epoxy gun that we use.
It's kind of hard the first time you do it to get the idea of how much you need in there without experimenting a little bit, but you basically want to fill it at least about a third of the way up, and then let the tang fill the rest. If you put too much in, you'll get a lot that weeps out, and you'll have to deal with that. But I think a little too much is better than a little too little.
So where I typically look when filling is I'm looking down the side of the hole, making sure that the glue is thin and flowing nicely. Sometimes if you squeeze it too hard, it will um, attach to the sides of your hole, thus clogging it up quicker, making you think that you have enough epoxy in there when you don't.
Yeah, one other tip is, especially when it's cold here, the epoxy will be a little thicker, and to thin it easily, we just warm it up. So you can just take the container and stick it in warm water, and that makes it a little looser when it comes out of the tube. It makes it easier to use.
That should be.
All right, so he filled it up, and now he's going to
Basically,
stick it in.
fill it about right to where the ferrule is.
Yeah.
And sometimes.
All right.
Which I have way
Here,
too
move
much
your hand
here.
so we can see the
Well,
epoxy seeping out.
it's going to seep out on both sides in just a second here.
You can see it's dripping out all over the handle, and he's just going to clean that up as best he can for the time being. And make sure that the entire ferrule gets filled.
Just did. Another thing to keep an eye on is if you have air pockets.
Yep.
Because then you'll have to refill that later. So right now I have a little bubble here. It just keeps filling up a little bit. But.
So if you don't have a nice handy clamp like this, you can make do with a variety of things. A small cup will hold the knife up. You can stuff the cup with newspaper or something like that just to hold it in an upright position. I know when I visited Takeda, he had a basically a cardboard box that he used. In the background of this shot, you can see we took a piece of wood, since we do several at a time, and we drilled out some holes and stuck some cardboard in there and we often will let them set in there for an hour or so, even though it's 5-minute epoxy, and just to make sure it sets up firm. This is an important little step that he's doing. Try to keep in the shot there. So before it hardens up, you want to take it and orient it. It's still loose enough right now so that he can basically line it up right the way he likes it. Once it sets, you're done, so you gotta fiddle with it now. The other thing is sometimes the knife will drift a little bit, so you need to adjust it as it's hardening.
Problem with carpets. I'm just filling a little bit on here since I took the blade out of the handle and readjusted it because I didn't like the way it was fitting.
You're too high. Move the knife down a little bit so they can see.
It's hard.
All right, once it's the way we like it, we just set it back in the clamp or put it into the block over there and let it set. Give it about at least 10 minutes, and then come back and clean up that epoxy as it starts to dry, so it doesn't harden on the outside. That's pretty much it. Then you're done. I'm Mark Richmond. Stay sharp.